Do you want to be able to delete your enemies by suspending them in the air and then dropping a glacier on their head? Or dropping meteors on their head? What about an ice storm? Whether you want to kill your enemies with ice, fire, or lightning, this build has you covered. In this video, I'll show you the skills, the attributes, the passives, the companions, and the companion abilities that we're going to choose to make this build shine. So let's get into it. First, let's take a look at our skill bar down there on the bottom. Our first ability is going to be a shield ability. We cast this on ourselves, and the nice thing about this ability is that it's going to reduce the damage we take by 50%. It's massive. You're not always going to need to use this, but anytime you're fighting a lot of ranged enemies in particular, this can be really helpful at mitigating that damage that's hard to avoid, because another thing that it does is reflect projectiles back at the enemies that shot them. So this is a fantastic defensive ability. Our second ability there is actually a companion ability, because our primary offensive abilities are going to be up here under our grimoires that we're wearing. This build is going to be taking advantage of the grimoire system in the game, and we'll dive into that in a second. But the second ability there comes from Kai, and he uses a shotgun blast to basically taunt the enemy and get them off of you. Fantastic ability. The third ability there is from Yahtzee here. It creates an orb over the enemy's heads and then constantly shoots projectiles at all nearby enemies. Fantastic for damage. And the fourth ability there is also from Yahtzee, and it basically drops a purple nuke on enemies' heads. Does great damage. Fantastic ability. Then the fifth ability there is a self-heal. We use that ability when we need to heal ourselves in battle really quickly, and maybe we don't want to use a potion. And the sixth ability, this one is an AoE heal. It heals us and everyone in our party, and if they have been downed, it will revive them and get them back up on their feet. So it's a fantastic ability to have on your bar, especially until you get some passives that we talk about later, where every time we kill an enemy, we're going to be healing these guys. And once we get that passive, they really don't ever die. And now, as for the way grimoires work, grimoires come with a predetermined set of 4 abilities. So you find a grimoire with the abilities that you think you're going to use. So this grimoire right here, we're going to be using the second ability, that is Blizzard. This is a fantastic ability both for its damage and for its crowd control. It will murder everything stuck underneath it, and it's going to freeze them. So if they don't die, they'll be frozen, allowing you to do other types of damage on them. The number 3 ability there is a fantastic ability. This is a lightning ability that we can use to shoot at traps. So it's got great utility for 2 reasons. One, because it bounces between enemies multiple times. The more you have it leveled up, the more times it'll bounce between enemies. So if you're fighting 2 different enemies, it'll just bounce between the 2 of them until they die. It's a fantastic ability. And both of those abilities are only level 5. So you can start using them very early on in the game, all the way till the end game, right? So they're very worth investing in. The other 2 abilities, number 1 and number 4, I didn't find great use with. This first ability, it's a little lightning tendril thing, and it just didn't do enough damage for me to want to use it in this game. And the thunderstorm is good, but the thunderstorm would often miss the enemy, and compared to some of the other AoE abilities I'm using, it just didn't really do as much damage. So I haven't been using that as well. Now, as for the other grimoire and pop-up potions, we can see all our abilities there. If you can't see the abilities, it's the game's way of telling you you don't have enough essence, which is this game's version of mana, to cast them yet. So on this one, what we're going to be using is this ability right here, the number 2. This is the ability that will suspend enemies in the air. It'll create this orb, basically creating its own gravity and pulling everything underneath it towards that. They'll be stuck in the air floating for a very long time, which means you're going to have plenty of time to drop your number 3 ability, glacier, on them. So when that hits the ground, it does massive damage to everything nearby. And then you can pop it by attacking it for even more damage to the enemies nearby. Really, really nice set of abilities there. And then the number 4 ability here, this one is nice. If everything else is on cooldown, I'll use this. However, it has a similar problem to the thunderstorm, where the meteors land where they want to. And if there's one enemy in there, sometimes it has a habit of just dodging that enemy for like a really long time. And so it can be hit or miss, pun intended. So those are the abilities we're using on our bars. Now let's go over to our skill tree, which is how you're going to make all of that happen. So the skill tree in this game is really interesting. It's got some nice passives and some nice skills for you to invest in. So the game breaks the skill tree into basically 3 different skill trees. So you've got fighter, ranger, wizard. This is of course a mage. So we're going to be leaning very heavily into the mage skill tree, the wizard skill tree. However, there's some really useful passives in ranger and fighter that we're going to take advantage of too, because the game lets us do that, which is awesome. Now, this game is great, but another game you might love is Crystal of Atlan, a brand new cross-platform magic punk MMO action RPG. So whatever you do, make sure you sign up for the beta test from February 18th to March 5th using the link in the description of this video. Crystal of Atlan features a fluid combo-based combat system where you'll have seamless control over both your skills and your character movement. Launch enemies high into the air and take advantage of a verticality that traditional MMOs never think to use. Choose the class that best suits you and your playstyle and unlock over 20 different skill combinations. Experiment with all of them until you find your favorite loadout. MMOs are always fun alone, but Crystal of Atlan knows they're also fun together. So in this game, you can dive into co-op dungeons and join a guild fleet system to connect with other players with similar interests. So what are you waiting for? Embark on an epic journey through a fantasy world where magic and technology intertwine. As a free-spirited adventurer, you'll uncover the secrets of ancient Atlan ruins and confront powerful factions. So click the link in the description below to sign up for Crystal of Atlan beta right now. Thanks for listening. Now let's get back to the video. So on the wizard side of the things, we're going to be taking Arcane Veil. Now, the way grimoires work is if you cast a spell from your grimoire, aka if you use this bar right here, the one that the grimoire provides you, then that grimoire is providing level 1 of that ability. And by putting 2 points into this, you're getting that level plus 2 more. See, I have 2 points in this. Now we get the rank 3 benefit when we cast the spell from the grimoire, if we have the grimoire. I don't have this skill on a grimoire, so when I cast the skill, I get 2 points, which means projectiles are reflected back at enemies. That's all I wanted. Melee attackers are knocked back. I didn't need that, so we didn't put the 3rd point. Now, Blizzard, however, we're always casting this from the grimoire, so we are getting all 3 points. Even though we only put 2 in, the 3rd point is given to us by using the grimoire to cast the ability. So we get the Blizzard ability at level 1. We get the reduced cast time for it. This is massive, by the way. It takes forever to cast that ability without rank 2. And then rank 3 increases the duration by 6 seconds, which is also massive because by default, it's a 3-second ability. So you're basically tripling the duration of the ability when you take that 3rd passive. It's huge for its damage. Okay, so you definitely want to get the first 2 points and then cast it from grimoire for the 3rd point to be kicking in. Same thing goes with the Crackling Bolt. Now, these are 2 things you're going to want to unlock early, really early, especially Crackling Bolt. This ability early on is going to do wonders for you. It's going to carry you through the early game here. So the first point of it is going to give us Crackling Bolt. The second one is going to make it bounce between enemies 6 times. And the 3rd point, 8 times. So if you've got 2 enemies, it's going to hit each one 4 times. That's massive. Sometimes if an enemy is in a corner, since it bounces off of the enemy, you can get it to hit the same enemy multiple times without another enemy being nearby, just because it had nowhere else to bounce. Really powerful ability. In order to unlock these abilities, we have to put points into Grimoire Mastery. So anytime you can put a point into here, it's going to be a good idea to do so. And we're going to take that all the way to level 4. Each level of this is going to unlock the next tier of spells. You can see here, level 1 is these skills. Level 2 is going to give us these. Level 3 is these. And level 4 is this right here. So putting points in here does 2 things for us. 1, it unlocks the abilities so that we can level them up. And then 2, it's going to, as it says over there, it's going to decrease the cost of using these spells from the Grimoire. So 15%, 18%, 20%. So it's giving us spell cost reduction, which is really useful in this game. We're going to go ahead and put 2 points into every spell we're casting from Grimoire. So we're going to put 2 points into Blizzard, Crackling Bolt, Freezing Pillar, Pull of Aora, and Meteor Shower. I have 3 points here. You can ignore that. That was before I had a Grimoire that had that spell attached to it. So now I could take that point out if I wanted to do a respec. And I've got 2 points on standby because I've got a few different options you can do with that. We'll talk about that at the end. Another thing worth considering putting points into in the wizard skill tree is going to be your wand mastery. This just is simply increasing the damage you do with your wand. Your wand does fantastic damage. You shoot that at an enemy, they're going to feel it. And you can go ahead and pump that damage up by 25% with 1 point. And then you get diminishing returns with each additional point. So the second point will give you 15% more damage, taking it up to 40. And that last point would give you 10% more damage to 50. So you can put that first point in, and then if you feel like you're using your wand a lot and you want to do more damage, you can put a couple more points in there if you want. Now this passive right here is incredibly useful. By the way, passives are circular, skills are square. Skills you have to cast yourself. Passives, right? These are just active all the time passively. So this next passive right here, Harvest Essence, if we put 1 point into this, we get twice as much essence back when we kill an enemy. So every time you kill an enemy in this game, it drops an essence orb on the ground. You pick that up and you get a little bit of essence back. This is great for mages especially, but for everyone in general because everybody's abilities are costing essence. So this is how you get essence back between fights without having to constantly chug your essence potions. You kill some enemies, you walk over the orbs, and it gives you a little bit of your essence back. However, without having points into this passive, it's giving you a fraction of what you spent on the spells to kill that enemy. Once you get 1 or 2 points into this, you'll basically kill enemies and then you'll be topped off again when you leave the battle. And you'll start start the next battle with full essence because you picked up the essence orbs that you killed. Finally, you can put points into Secretive Rime. This basically increases the amount of frost accumulation you get. So enemies are going to freeze faster from your frost abilities. This is really helpful. This is really handy. I like it. Go ahead and put 1 point, maybe even 2 into here. And then if you want to, you can put a point into lightning and fire accumulation if you find yourself using your lightning and fire abilities a lot and you want to beef them up just a little bit. Not a bad idea. Now, like I mentioned, we're going to be dipping into Ranger as well as Fighter just to grab a couple of their passives. We're going to leave their abilities alone, but we are going to take a couple of their passives. One is Quick Switch. This is a more or less essential passive that you have to grab because it takes forever. Like, it's painful to switch weapons because you get to have 2 weapons in this game. So I've got 1 weapon set out right now. I hit my weapon switch button. Now I've got the other weapon set. So it's a grimoire and a sword, and then I switch and it pulls out a different grimoire and a wand. As you can see, it takes a second to swap your weapon out. So you want that to happen fast, especially in battle. Even at this speed, it feels like it takes forever. And if you don't have this passive, it takes quite a bit longer. So I would say that this is more or less essential. The second rank of it isn't needed because that is applying only to guns. So just take 1 point of the Quick Switch passive. Then the other one we're going to take advantage of here is Critical Strike. We can put 1 point into this and get 10% crit strike. This is going to be predominantly useful for our wand attacks when we're wanding enemies down between skills. You know, if there's one really thick enemies, sometimes you'll cast all your abilities, so you'll be waiting for the cooldown on them to reset. And so you'll have to wand the enemy a few times, and getting more crits while doing that can feel really nice. And then finally, the fighter skill tree right here. This one right here, get this as soon as you can. So when you hit level 20, grab this bad boy right here. It says that killing enemies restores 10% of your companion's maximum health. So every time you kill any enemy, no matter how small or frail that enemy is, it's going to heal all of your companions by 10%. So once you get this, your companions basically stop dying in combat because you're constantly killing things. So they're constantly getting 10% heals. Really handy. If you want to put that second point in there to resurrect them when you kill an enemy and get 20% of their health back, go for it. That's also a totally viable option. One of these 2 points here, I would probably put into that if I felt like my companions were dying too often. Now, besides the damage effectiveness of the abilities that we've chosen, there's also the puzzle effectiveness of the abilities we've chosen. So the number 2 ability here, as I'll demonstrate, this freezes water. And there will be puzzles where you need to get on water and then jump on a ledge on the other side. And if you're stuck swimming down in the water, you won't be able to make that jump. So you're going to use that one a lot. You're going to freeze water with that ability and then walk on it constantly. Another one you're going to use all the time is you'll see a box that you have to electrify in order to open a door. And sometimes some doors take 3 boxes that you need to electrify. So what you would do is aim and then throw it at it. And when it hit it, it would electrify that there. Those 2 abilities are puzzles you'll run into constantly. And so if you don't have those skills on your bar, navigating them is a lot more work than it needs to be, but it is possible. That's also the reason that I have Yahtzee and Kai on my team. Both of them have puzzle solutions in their kit. So if we open up our skill wheel here, we can see all their abilities that we have unlocked. And Yahtzee here has this one, Dispel Illusion. So there will be walls glowing purple, and this means they're actually an illusion, and that illusion can be dispelled by her so that you can get past that fake wall. You'll run into these constantly towards the end of the game, and it makes her incredibly useful to have around. Similarly, Kai, straight from the very beginning of the game, when you get him, you're going to constantly be running into webs and brush that you have to burn in order to walk through, in order to walk past. So you'll use this ability right here. You'll just open up your wheel while looking at it, and you'll say, hey, burn this thing. And he will do so. But their usefulness isn't limited to the fact that they can help so much with puzzles. While they are more useful to puzzles than the other companions, their abilities are also great. He's got taunts. I have 2 different taunts from him. One is a single target taunt, and this one here, he leaps into the middle of the enemies and taunts AoE taunt. Both really useful. And then she just does fantastic mage damage with these 2 abilities. So great 2 companions. That's why I've chosen these ones. It's for their puzzles more than anything else, but their abilities are still very useful. All right, next let's talk about the attribute points. So the attribute points have very harsh diminishing returns. So we're not going to pump any one stat too high. So for instance, if we look at attack speed here, the first point that we put in gives us 4% attack speed. Then the 6th point gives us 2. So from 4 to 2, and then at 10 to 11, we only get 1% 5% attack speed. So at a certain point, it becomes almost useless to be putting more points into a stat, right? Which is the game's way of telling you, hey, put your stats somewhere else. Okay, fine, we'll do that. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna invest predominantly in might, because this is gonna increase our damage and our carry capacity, two things that are gonna feel amazing to have points into. Each point of this gives you a lot of carry capacity, so it's very generous in that way, and it's essential for making sure that you're not constantly running out of carry capacity. If you go over your carry capacity, you become encumbered and your character moves dreadfully slow. So try to avoid that by putting points into the stat. The best part is it's also increasing your damage, right? A substantial increase to your damage when you start putting points into this. So it's a nice stat to invest in, no matter how you slice it. We're also going to be looking forward to putting points into perception for that crit chance, right? So we'll put 4 points into that as well. We're going to put points into intellect. So then you're going to go ahead and put some points into there. After you've got 4 points into intellect, going to the 5th level of intellect is only giving you 3 essence. So not a great benefit to you, right? So we stop there. Now we've still got 13 points left. The dexterity is going to be nice. This is going to increase our ability speed and our parkouring speed. Just going to make the game feel more fluid and help with casting those abilities faster at a more reasonable rate. And then what I'd probably do is just put a couple points into Constitution, a couple points into Resolve, and then with whatever points you get after that, by the time you finish the game, you'll probably be around level 26, level 27 if you played through the game really thoroughly. Probably 24 or so if you skipped a lot of side content, maybe even 23, right? So this will be about how many points you have if you go through the game without being a completionist. If you're a completionist, you'll have 5 more points to spend, and I probably recommend putting them into might. I might even put the points into might straight from the beginning, just because of the carry capacity. I'm the type of person that picks up everything I find. So if you want to take might to 8 before you put any of these other points in, I respect it. I don't blame you. I would do the same thing probably. And for the last point here, let's go ahead and put it into dexterity for the increased cast speed and action speed, just to make things feel a little bit smoother. And there you go. This is a rough idea of what we would want our attribute points to look like on this build, and that's why we would want them to look that way. Now let's quickly talk about our gear. Now gear is something in this game that you can find and you can very easily miss, because each gear has a location that it is found, and if you happen to miss that chest, well, then you're not going to have the piece of gear that I'm talking about. So I'm happy to say that none of this gear is essential to the build. In fact, a lot of it doesn't really have anything specifically to do with the build. I just picked it because it feels good to use, and I'll explain why. So for instance, our chest piece really is not build specific. It's just giving us 3% damage reduction and 20% movement speed. Move speed in this game feels way better than it does in most other games, because it's a massive open world and you don't have a mount. And this game rewards you for looking behind every door and on top of every mountain, right? It's a game that really rewards exploration. And so the faster that you can get up to the top of the mountain and the faster that you can dive down to the bottom of the ocean, it just makes the exploration feel that much more worthwhile, because the time that it takes to do it, it's cut down by 20% from this chest piece, and it's cut down by 10% from these boots. So I've always got 30% move speed. My character zooms around. It feels great. My gloves are very build specific, right? This gives me 10% ability cast speed. I'm a mage, so cast speed sounds great. 20% frost damage. One of my hardest hitting abilities, right? We drop glaciers on enemies' heads. Frost damage. Perfect. This is good. We love these gloves. They're called the Ninnagoth's Gruesome Grasp. Really fun gloves. There isn't a trinket in the game that I really had my heart set on using with this build. You could justify any number of them. So the trinket I'm wearing gives me 1 dex, 2 perception. It's just extra stats for free. As for my rings, I've got this one right here. It gives me 60 to max essence. That's huge. That is basically taking my essence from a little over 100 to almost 200 here. You can see here, I took the ring off and put it on. This is how much essence that ring is giving me right there, the missing chunk of my bar. That's the Disciples ring. And then we've got the Ring of Greater Overseeing. This gives us 20% area of effect damage. This is a fantastic ring for this build, because most of our abilities are AoE abilities. So love this ring. Ring of Greater Overseeing. Definitely want to get that one. Now for the weapons. So for your main hand, because you've got a main hand weapon and an offhand weapon, your offhand is always going to be a grimoire, right? And we choose our grimoire based on the abilities that it's giving us. So you'll find a grimoire, you'll look at the abilities you can use with that grimoire, and if it's the abilities you like to use, you use it, and if it's not, then you don't use that grimoire. So the grimoire we use is called a Grimoire of Storms, because that comes with Blizzard and Crackling Bolt, both of which we use in this build. For the main hand, you just basically want to take the highest ranked wand that you can find, or the highest ranked weapon of your choosing that you can find. It can be any one-hand weapon. It could be a pistol, it could be a sword like the Meteor Blade, or it could be be a wand. Wands are just really nice because they're ranged, they do fantastic damage. Thematically, they work perfectly with a mage build. So you want to take the highest ranked one you can, because the bonuses on top of them are generally pretty tame. They're pretty mild, so to speak. They're not nearly as important as having the highest quality one right here. This one is legendary, right? And below legendary is superb quality, and below superb quality is exceptional quality. That's how you know what rank something is. Then below that, you have common quality, and that's the base one right here. So you can tell by their color how good they are. The game will explain this to you in the tooltips while you're playing it, but basically, if you're using legendary items and the enemy is using superb, you do 35% more damage to them, and vice versa. If they're wearing superb quality, but you're only wearing exceptional quality gear, they're going to do 35% more damage to you. And so that's why it's going to be really important to upgrade your gear. No matter what chests you get, if you find a chest you really like, but you go to the next zone, you want to make sure you upgrade that to the next tier with the upgrade materials that you find along the way, so that your gear is at least the same quality as the enemies you're fighting, so that you're doing more damage to them and they're not doing more damage to you. If your weapon is superb, but they're in legendary, you're going to do 35% less damage. You're going to get a 35% damage penalty. So it's a 70% damage swing if you're under or over the enemy. And if you are even with them, then it's a 0% swing. You're doing your base amount of damage. So that's how we choose our main hand weapon. Just basically the highest quality one-hander that you have is going to probably be the most effective. But my personal preference is to use wands when possible. So I would always use the highest quality wand I had. As for our other grimoire, I'm using this legendary one. With the Grimoire of Storms, you'll be able to buy this off of vendors anywhere in the game. Like constantly, you'll be checking with vendors and they'll have Grimoires of Storms. So every time you go to a new zone, you'll look for the next tier up of Grimoire of Storms. At first, you'll have a common Grimoire of Storms, and then you'll go to the next zone and you'll see that you can buy a superb Grimoire of Storms for a pretty reasonable price from the merchant. So you'll do that. And then in the next zone, you'll buy the exceptional Grimoire of Storms, and so on. But Alara's Grimoire, this one right here that I like a lot, this is a legendary one. So you have to find this one in the game. And the reason I love it is because I use 3 of the abilities on it. I use the Pull of Aora, the Freezing Pillar, and Meteor Shower. I use all 3 of these, and this Grimoire provides those. You do have to find this one in order to be able to use it. So in the meantime, you'll just use any Grimoire that has maybe Freezing Pillar on it. You know, you'll look for one with Freezing Pillar until you're able to find this legendary one. And you'll find plenty of those, don't worry. And worst case, you can cast spells like Pull of Aora without a Grimoire. You can just have it on your bar down there and you can just free cast it. So don't sweat it. As far as companion skills and passives that we're unlocking go, we are maxing out Fire and Ire by Kai. This is our single target taunt. That's going to ignite targets, greatly increase the amount of stun, and reduce the cooldown of the ability. Really good ability. So we just want to max that one out. And then we're going to put a couple points into his passive. So you get to choose between leveling up his passive or his skills. We only really use this ability, honestly. I put 1 point into this so that I have an AoE taunt when I want it, but I don't really use it that often because it's just a bit overkill to manage that many abilities. So we start dipping into passives instead because we don't have to do anything. It's just always on, right? And this one's really nice because when Kai's health is reduced to 0, he revives himself. That's huge. So put a point into this right away. So the Kai comes back up if he ever goes down. Early in the game, he'll die fairly often. And then by the end of the game, you're not going to see your companions dying very much, especially once you get to the passive that is healing them every time you kill an enemy. And then for Yahtzee, the other companion we're going to be using, we're going to be putting 2 points in Essence Explosion, and we're going to take Concentrated Essence, which increases the size of the blast. And we're going to take Scrappy Casting, which reduces the cooldown by 33%. Anytime you want, you can just pause the video here and just slam your points into these just like so. You can respec really cheap, only 218 gold at my level, right? All the way up at 26. So much cheaper earlier in the game. You can just press this and you can respec it to look like this page if you want to take the passive side took. And finally, we put a point into Yahtzee's Blast and then another point into Explosive Blast so that her skills are more powerful. Until you get Yahtzee, because she's the last companion you get, Marius is great for increased crowd control and damage. And then Giada brings in some fantastic heals and shields, both of which heal you. So the heal heals you for a massive amount. So Giada is basically, if you want to play the game on easy mode, it's Giada. It's very comfy play style. She's got really powerful heals, and then she's got a shield that will absorb damage. And if they don't attack the shield, you get the health that shield was protecting you. So if it was a 500 HP shield, but they didn't hit it, then you get a 500 HP heal when it expires. Really useful. All right, guys, that's everything you need to know for this build. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask them down in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer any of them. I hope you guys enjoy this game as much as I did, and I really hope you enjoy this build as much as I did. I can't help but throw together a really powerful mage in games like this. As something about the mage aesthetic and the fantasy of it all, and it's just really fun to me. So if you're like that, I hope you enjoy it. Be sure to let me know how it feels. Massive shout out to my YouTube channel members. If you want to become a member of my channel to support the channel and everything I do here so I can keep bringing you the highest quality guides possible, be sure to click the join button down below or in the description of the video. If you're not sure what to do next, maybe check out one of my other videos popping up on screen right now. Hope to see you in the next one. Don't forget to subscribe.